Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Lily McAdam, and if you don't know me, I like to check with issues concerning the queer community and what we can do to solve them. In today's talk, we are going to be talking about something that is really, very important to me. And that is dignity as a queer man, how you can keep it and how you can take it. Because when I say that nobody's going to give you dignity or that basic human baseline respect, I really do mean that, and I really do mean how you can take it for yourself, because ain't nobody's gonna give it to you, right? So, number one, starting off really strong, right? You have to be ready to fight, alright? Okay. And I know a lot of you are probably, thinking, watching this and saying, oh, I'm skinny, I don't really do fighting, I'm not good at that, that's a little scary, I don't want to get into that shit, and I get that, and I do, right? But here's the thing: when I say you have to be ready to fight, I don't mean you gotta be good at it. I mean you gotta be willing to fight. Cause here's the thing: even if you lose that fight, at least you fought, right? And every time somebody insults you, right, and you just take that shit, right, that is not only a blow to your own dignity, to your own respect, and not only lets those people walk all over you, it also lets them walk over your entire community, alright? And every time, you let that shit happen, you let it happen to everybody else too. You're telling the rest of your community, telling the rest of your people, oh, we should just let them do this, we just let them do that, And listen, every time, you stand up for yourself, you don't just stand up for yourself, you stand up for the community, you make yourself get a better image, right? And, for me especially, right, I live in a city, right, where there's not, like, a lot of gay people, where I'm, like, one of the few visibly queer people, and if I just kind of, just said, oh, alright, ignore these people, let these people walk all over me, what the fuck image, what role am I setting for my community out here? Especially when I'm one of the only people, And that's a very big impact if you're one of the only queer or visibly queer people in your place, Alright? And, like, you really gotta be willing to defend yourself. Even if you're gonna get beat the shit out of, even if you're gonna lose, even if you're gonna get in trouble, whatever it is, you gotta be willing to do that, alright? Not only for your own dignity, but for everybody like you, And it's really important. I've had 3 concussions, I really have gotten my shit rocked, alright? But it's a sacrifice I'm all too happy to make, and it's very necessary. It's very important that we do that, those things, that we get beat up, that we have the, how do I say it, how should I say it, willingness to suffer for your dignity and your people's dignity, alright? And I think I'll go more in depth into that later, alright? But for number 2, I think would be something very similar, and is arm yourself. Now, I know that sounds a little crazy, right? But believe me, gun ownership among gay people is growing. There are, if you've ever heard of, like, the Pink Pistols, they're a gay, founded organization to help arm the queer community, right? And looking in history in the civil rights movement, how did the black people gain that dignity and equality? They didn't just march for it. They did not just march and say, oh, give us the vote, give us this. No. They took it. See, the Black Panthers armed themselves, They didn't just ask. And, they were like us in that way. We know that we cannot ask for anything because it's not going to be given to us, alright? And if you want something, you have to be willing to take it. Because in this world, nobody's going to give you something if you're queer, if you're black, if you're a person of color, if you're an ethnic minority, things like that, right? And people aren't going to give you shit, okay? So you have to be willing to take it. And gun ownership is one of those few ways of which you can pretty much ensure, safety for yourself, in the sense of, I'm not going to be lynched on the street, right? And that shit happens. People want to act like it doesn't. People want to act like, oh, it's better now. No, it fucking ain't. No, it ain't. If I can't count on, even if I had 10 people, if I had, like, another person that's with me, I've been to over, 30 fights. I've been in a bunch of fights. I've been called a faggot, more times than I can count, I've been, jumped a bunch, too. And although, in many countries, gun ownership is legal, and this, I would really recommend thinking, at the very least, considering arming yourself. At the very least, And if you can't do that, or you're just not willing to, just flat out, you know, that's up to you. That really truly is up to you. However, I would really, really strongly recommend it. All right. Okay. Going on to number 3, the way you speak. Carry yourself very, very strongly. I'm not now. Don't pretend to be somebody you know who you aren't. Obviously, you know, we're gay. You know, we're queer. You know, we can't do that. That's something that we'll never do. You know, but I think it's important to remind yourself how you're speaking, where you're speaking, and what image you're making of yourself while you speak. Don't, and all the stereotypes too. Now, you never ever want to go into those stereotypes, right? Even accidentally, you know, even if you speak a little more flamboyantly, a little more queerly, that's great, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, look at where you are, look at who you're with, look at who's thinking about this, look at who's thinking about that, and if you want to make a good first impression, don't go into that stereotypical way of speech, all right? That's like, and that's a really, 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 really big, big important one. I promise you that. It's a really, really important thing, all right? Going into number 4, let yourself be noticed, all right? That's also a big one, okay? And you think that kind of would go into the way that you speak, and it does, right? But here's the thing, and this especially goes for, you know, people who are, you know, in a city or in a place where there's not a lot of other queer people, you know, no matter where you are, you know, people are gonna look at you, right? So what matters is that you take advantage of that, is that you be bold. If you try to go in the shadows, you know, people still are gonna see you. People still are gonna shine a light on that, you know. People are gonna look at you, you know. But so you want to be bold with the things that you do, your actions. You want to be, you know, you want to raise your hand in class. You know, you want to volunteer for this event type of thing. You know, you want to get up on stage when they ask for volunteers. You want to do this, you want to do that shit, and you want to be seen because really, 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 there's so few of us. There's so few visibly queer people in so many different places. And if you're one of those visibly queer people in those places where there's not a lot of us, you are a representative. You are our advocate in every last sense. Because, and every minute too. In every fucking minute too, you are our advocate. When there's not any other of us there to speak, to defend ourselves, to do this, you speak for all of us there. And every second too, because people are always observing you, and people are always judging you off the fact that you're queer, and they're always judging the community off of you because you're the only one they fucking know. So you gotta carry yourself good, you know. Be a righteous, morally correct person. Get up there, get on the stage, you know. Be volunteer, do this. Just let your presence be known. I think that's a really fucking important one, you know. Yeah, really, really freaking important, alright? You know, I think for number 5, right, would be something like, you really want to also, you really want to try to, like, get that dignity for yourself. Not just in the sense of how you speak, not just in the sense of, oh, you fight for yourself, you know. In every last aspect, I think you should try to get that for yourself. Really, even when nobody's looking, right? And you should build up that integrity of, I'm a very dignified person. You want to build that up, all right? You know, just try to become more intellectual. I think would be a really smart thing to do, especially if you're one of the only queer people in your communities. You know, right? I think you know, always focus on furthering the community, right? Because when you further the community, you further yourself, right? You know, so write on being queer. You know, speak about being queer and be open about that shit. Even if you're already visibly queer, even if you're already, you know, look at me. You know, I don't have to tell you, you know, that I'm gay, right? But you know, it helps a lot if I speak more about being queer, if I speak more about what it's like to be queer, about the struggles of being queer, and about the pains of being queer, right? Because every time I do that, I further my community. I change people's minds a little bit. I make people more known to this, more aware of this, perhaps more caring, more empathetic towards this struggle or that, you know? And you really, 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 really should take the time to just educate people. Your family, your friends, just people, everybody, really. It's that fucking important. I can't